They always said the house was too big for one man. Lucas Harper never argued with that. 3 stories tall, tucked into the side of a pine-covered ridge in Colorado, it had been built for a family that never quite happened. Since his mother passed the year before, it sat even quieter, like it knew not to echo in the absence of laughter. He arrived just past midnight. Snow had fallen earlier now, frozen into a thin crust that cracked beneath his boots as he made his way to the front door. His driver offered to wait. Lucas shook his head. He needed the solitude. 3 weeks of meetings, late dinners, flashing cameras. New York drained him. This house, despite its stillness, was the only place that felt like his. He entered without switching on the main lights. His footsteps were soft on the hardwood floor. His coat already hung over the stair rail out of habit. Something tugged at him, a strange sense that the house wasn't empty. Not haunted, but occupied. Faint warmth still lingered in the air, like someone had recently been near the fireplace. He didn't call out. Lucas had long learned to trust instincts more than noise. He walked the hallway slowly, heading toward the guest wing. It was the room his mother once preferred, filled with soft blue linens and windows that overlooked the frozen lake. No one used it anymore. The door was ajar. He pushed it open gently. The light from the hallway spilled into the room in a golden stream. And then he saw her. Lying on the bed legs tucked to the side, a woman rested motionless. Her hair dark against the pillow. Her dress, long velvet, wine-colored, looked like it belonged at a gala. But it was wrinkled, smudged at the hem. Her feet were bare. What froze Lucas wasn't just her presence, but what covered her face. A silk blindfold white, tightly knotted at the back of her head. She didn't move, didn't flinch, as if she had been expecting him. Lucas remained still, unsure whether to step forward or retreat and call someone. But before he could decide, she spoke. "Please, take them off." Her voice was low. Not cracked, not broken, just quiet. Almost rehearsed like she had said it before. To someone else, maybe too many times. He stepped closer, heart pounding harder than he expected. She didn't lift her hands, didn't reach for him, just stayed there breathing slowly. "Are you all right?" he asked. She didn't answer. Lucas sat at the edge of the bed, close enough to see the faint imprint of fingers on her wrists, as if someone had held her too tightly. The silk was knotted firm. It wasn't a sleep mask, it was restraint. His fingers moved with care. Slowly he undid the knot. The blindfold slipped free and landed between them. She didn't open her eyes right away, as if sight might hurt more than darkness. When she finally did, he drew in a breath. Her face was striking, but not in the way beauty often shocks. It was more in the way pain leaves a trace. Thin bruises along the cheekbone, a fading cut by her lip. Eyes wide, unsure but alert. Not lifeless, not defeated, just waiting. "Do you know where you are?" he asked. Her lips barely moved. "Somewhere I wasn't supposed to be seen." Lucas stared at her, unable to form words. Because in that moment he realized something terrifying. She didn't come here to hide. She came here to be found. Lucas Harper had spent most of his adult life surrounded by people but rarely felt accompanied. At 36, his name was printed on buildings featured in business magazines, whispered across boardrooms, and yet silence was still the only language that made sense to him. The house in Colorado had belonged to his mother, a sanctuary she'd chosen long after his father left and long before cancer took her voice. He kept it untouched the way she left it. paintings still hung where she placed them. Her books with soft bent spines still rested on the coffee table. It wasn't nostalgia, it was reverence. Lucas had grown up between cold cities and colder meetings, bouncing between prep schools and empty hotel suites, while his parents expanded their empire. He learned to read spreadsheets before emotions. But his mother was the one who taught him about presence, about how real love sometimes looked like showing up and then not saying a word. He didn't cry when she passed. He built another wing on the mountain house instead. People thought he was grieving through luxury. The truth was quieter. He just didn't want the house to feel smaller without her. Now sitting across from a woman whose name he didn't know, he realized the silence was different. Not empty, not sterile, just suspended. She hadn't spoken since he removed the blindfold. Her eyes scanned the room slowly, cautiously, as if cataloging her surroundings for danger. When she met his gaze, it wasn't with fear, but with exhaustion. Lucas didn't question her right away. There was something in her stillness that warned against it. Instead, he brought her a glass of water and a warm towel, set them down near the bed, and stepped back. She didn't touch them for almost 10 minutes. When she did, her fingers trembled. She sipped slowly, avoiding his eyes. Lucas didn't ask the obvious questions. "Who are you? How did you get here? Are you hurt?" Instead, he asked softly, "Do you want to eat something?" She blinked, then a small nod. He walked downstairs and returned with bread soup and a single square of dark chocolate. He didn't realize why he added the chocolate until later. She stared at the food, then whispered, "Will you stay in the room?" Lucas hesitated. "If you want me to." She nodded once. He sat near the window, far enough to give her space, but close enough if she needed help. She ate in silence, hands shaking with every spoonful. When she finished, she leaned back against the headboard and whispered, "I don't know how I got here." He didn't push. "Do you remember anything?" She looked toward the window. A car. Someone said my name, but not like it belonged to me. Like it was just convenient. Lucas stayed quiet. She looked at him, then really looked. "Why didn't you call the police?" He met her eyes without flinching. "Because you didn't ask me to." She processed that. A long pause settled between them. Then she whispered, "Most people don't wait for permission." Lucas shrugged slightly. "Most people aren't here right now." "I am." Her gaze dropped. She traced the edge of the empty bowl with a fingertip, her voice barely audible. "Do you think I'm crazy?" "No," Lucas said simply. She laughed once. "Dry, brittle. That makes one of us." Her shoulders sagged slightly as if that sentence alone took weight off her. Lucas didn't speak again that night. He brought her a sweater, left the guest room door ajar, and slept in the hallway outside with a blanket and his dog curled beside him. In the morning she was still there, awake, sitting cross-legged in the same bed, the blindfold neatly folded on the nightstand. And when their eyes met again, she said only 3 words. "You stayed close." Lucas nodded. "I will if you need me to." She didn't answer, but she didn't ask him to leave either. The next few days unfolded like a delicate truce. Neither of them dared to speak out loud. Lucas didn't call anyone, not the police, not his assistant, not even May, the old caretaker who checked in on the house once a week. He turned off his phone, canceled the meetings on his calendar, and let the world forget him while he tried to figure out who had appeared in his home. The woman whose name he still didn't know began to move through the house. with the same caution of someone waking up in unfamiliar skin. She ate little, spoke less, but no longer flinched when he entered the room. Lucas noticed she always kept her back to the wall, avoided mirrors, and never asked questions. She borrowed a sweater from the closet, pulled socks from a drawer he left open on purpose, and once, when he brewed coffee too strong, she wrinkled her nose and said barely above a whisper that she preferred tea. It was the first time she had offered a preference. Lucas went out in the snow that morning, drove 40 minutes into town, and came back with 4 different kinds. When he placed the boxes on the table, she looked at them for a long time before saying thank you without looking up. That evening, she stood near the fireplace, clutching the tea mug with both hands. Lucas sat nearby, not watching her, just existing in the same quiet. After several minutes, she said, "I had a dog once. His name was Mellow. He was the only thing that ever waited for me to come home." Lucas didn't reply. She didn't expect him to. The next morning, she asked for a book. He led her to the library his mother once adored. The room still smelled like cedar and old pages. She moved her fingers across the spines, like someone touching stone tablets, reverent, unsure. She picked something thin, a novel with soft prose, and curled up on the couch in the sunroom where the windows framed the forest like living artwork. Lucas watched her from the kitchen, the way she read slowly, lips sometimes mouthing the words as if to anchor them in memory. He realized she wasn't just reading. She was remembering how to be still, how to be someone other than what had been done to her. That night he made dinner. Nothing extravagant, just grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, warm bread. She ate in silence, then said, "I never learned to cook." They always said I didn't need to, that someone else would do it for me. Lucas tilted his head. She didn't answer. He didn't press. The next morning she asked if she could help fold laundry. It was small, unremarkable, but Lucas sensed it was her way of offering a piece of herself, proof that she wasn't there to hide. They folded clothes together without speaking. When she reached for a shirt and flinched slightly, Lucas noticed a scar along her wrist, thin and pale but deep. He said nothing. She caught his glance and pulled her sleeve down. That afternoon she asked, "Why are you here, in this house, I mean?" Lucas thought for a moment. "Because it's the only place that doesn't lie to me." She looked at him as if trying to decide whether he meant it. "You're supposed to be someone important, right?" "I'm important on paper," he said. "Not in here." He tapped his chest lightly. She smiled then, just for a moment. It wasn't a bright smile, but it was real. That night she found an old record player and asked how it worked. He showed her. She chose a jazz album, something old and soft, and let it play while she moved slowly across the living room. Not dancing exactly, more like letting her limbs remember they belonged to her. Lucas sat on the edge of the couch, watching without watching, heart beating louder than the music. She turned once, caught his gaze, and didn't look away. "Do you think broken people deserve to be loved?" she asked. Lucas didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Only they know what love really means." She didn't respond, but she let the music keep playing. The following days brought small shifts. She no longer avoided the mirror in the hallway. She let sunlight touch her face without turning away. She began to hum sometimes while washing her cup. Lucas noticed she started placing small objects in the same places every day. A book left open, a folded napkin, a scarf over the armrest. as if marking the space, making it hers, inch by inch. He found himself rearranging less just to let her have control over something. One afternoon, while he was outside stacking firewood, she came to the porch with a cup of tea in her hands. She offered it without a word. He accepted it, fingers brushing briefly. She said, "I remember my name." Lucas looked at her. "What is it?" She hesitated, then whispered Isla. He repeated it softly. Isla. She closed her eyes like hearing it aloud grounded her. It was mine before they changed it, before they made me someone else. Lucas waited. She didn't elaborate, but later that evening she stood at the foot of the staircase and asked, "Can I stay longer?" "As long as you want," he said. "Even if I never tell you everything," he nodded. "Even then." She stepped closer. "Even if some parts of me never come back." Lucas met her eyes, especially then. That night, for the first time, she didn't close the door to her room. Lucas walked past it once, paused, and saw her asleep, arms curled beneath her cheek, breathing steady. The folded blindfold still sat untouched on the nightstand, but beside it now lay a small piece of paper with a single word written in soft handwriting: "Found." It started with the photograph. Lucas found it tucked between the pages of the book Isla had been reading. He hadn't meant to see it. The book had been left open on the kitchen counter spine, up a page dog-eared, as if she had stepped away for only a moment. When he moved it to keep it from the rising steam of the kettle, the photo fell out. It was small, creased at the edges, printed on thick, glossy paper. Isla was in it, unmistakably younger, wearing a white dress with sheer sleeves standing between two men in tailored suits. One of them was smiling too broadly, the other wasn't smiling at all. Isla's face looked frozen, not in fear, in something colder: submission. Lucas slid the photo back into the book without a sound. That night, as she stirred her tea, absent-mindedly, he asked, "Do you remember when that photo was taken?" Her hand stilled. She didn't look up. Which one? The one with the two men, the white dress. Her lips parted closed again. Then finally, "That was the last time I used my real name in public." Why, he asked. She kept her gaze on the tea. "Because after that, I belonged to someone else." He waited, knowing silence was sometimes the only thing that could coax truth. She exhaled. "They called it a mentorship program. I was in dance school behind on tuition, no family. They said it was an opportunity. They said I would be seen." Her voice wavered, "But they didn't mean on stage." Lucas stayed silent. Isla looked up. It started with invitations, private events, first-class flights, expensive gowns. "I thought I was lucky." She smiled bitterly. "But lucky girls don't get contracts they're not allowed to read. They don't get phones they can't unlock. They don't get numbers tattooed inside their wristbands." Lucas's fists clenched in his lap. Isla noticed. "Don't get angry for me," she said. "It won't help." Then what will he ask? Time, distance, maybe this house. She paused. "You." That last word came softly, unexpectedly, as if she hadn't meant to say it out loud. Lucas didn't respond. He simply stood, walked to the cabinet, and pulled out the envelope he had hidden. He handed it to her. "That's you. From a security company I trust. I asked them to find out who you were, in case you needed it someday." Isla stared at the envelope. Her hands trembled. "You had me investigated." "No," he said calmly. "I made sure you existed, that you weren't erased." She didn't open the envelope, just held it like something sacred. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not looking away." The next day she began to speak more freely. She told him about the compound in the mountains, where the guests weren't allowed outside. About the ranking system, the bidding codes, the way names were replaced with numbers. About how the last time she resisted, someone wrapped silk around her eyes and whispered, "If they can't see your fear, they'll pay more." Lucas sat beside her on the porch steps while she spoke, the mountains fading into dusk behind them. He didn't interrupt. When she finished, she said, "I escaped when one of the security drivers fell asleep, drunk. I climbed into the supply truck before it left. I didn't know where we were going. I didn't care. How did you end up here?" There was a woman in the house I was delivered to, older, wore a necklace with a hummingbird charm. She was kind. She saw something in me. She whispered to me when no one else was around, said there was a house up north, empty but safe. She said someone lived there who still knew the difference between a home and a cage. Lucas closed his eyes. "May, you know her?" Isla asked. "She used to work for my mother. She kept this house together after she passed. She saved me." "She saved me too," he said. Isla looked at him for a long time, then whispered, "I don't think I ever said it out loud before, that I was trafficked, not kidnapped, not taken, bought." Lucas reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. "They called me difficult," she continued, "because I wouldn't smile the way they liked, because I stopped trying to be what they paid for. So they stopped bidding. And when I was no longer valuable, they blindfolded me and left me in a house they thought was abandoned." She looked at him. "I don't want to be hidden anymore." "Then don't be," Lucas said. "But what if someone comes back? Then they'll meet someone who doesn't look away." That night, Isla took the folded blindfold from the nightstand and carried it to the fireplace. She stood there for several minutes, then dropped it into the flames. Lucas watched from behind, saying nothing. The silk curled, blackened, disappeared. Isla turned to him. "I want to remember everything, even the pain, because forgetting means they win." Lucas nodded. "Then we remember together." That night she didn't sleep in the guest room. She slept on the couch beside him, her head on his shoulder, their hands intertwined beneath the blanket. The fire burned low, but neither of them moved. There were still more truths to uncover. But for the first time, they weren't afraid of them. The first sign that something had shifted came in the form of tire tracks across fresh snow. Lucas noticed them early one morning while walking down to the lower shed. 2 sets wide and heavy, curved off the main road and stopped just short of the security gate, which had remained locked since the night Isla arrived. The cameras didn't catch anything. Someone had disabled the feed for 6 full minutes. That had never happened before. Lucas didn't tell Isla immediately. She was outside that morning helping shovel snow from the porch steps, her breath visible in the crisp air, cheeks flushed. There was something about the way she held the shovel that made him pause. Her posture was strong, now her gaze steady. She was no longer the girl curled up in a guest bed whispering for help. She was reclaiming space. Lucas spent the afternoon checking all the locks, testing the silent alarm system, calling May under the pretense of asking about weather updates. May hesitated before answering. Then she said quietly, "I heard someone's asking about you. Not reporters, not police, someone else." How Lucas asked. "A friend at the town registry said a man came by asking if this property was currently occupied. Gave a name I didn't like." "What name?" "Thomas Laird," she said. Lucas's blood went cold. Thomas Laird was not a name he knew personally, but he had seen it once in the report tied to Isla's file. A business partner listed under shell companies connected to 3 properties flagged for unlicensed activity. One of those properties was the compound where Isla had escaped. That night, Lucas told Isla. She didn't panic. She listened, then said, "I was wondering when they'd come back." "We can go," Lucas offered. "I have places no one knows about, safe houses even overseas." She shook her head. "No, I've done enough running. I came here to stop." "Then we'll make them stop," he said. The next day, Lucas contacted his legal team off the record. He asked about options for whistleblower protection, for anonymous witness testimony, for ways to expose a network without becoming the next target. The lawyers were cautious. One said quietly, "If you go after people with money and no conscience, you'd better be ready to burn with them." Lucas looked at Isla as she read by the fire. That night, her knees pulled up under his mother's old quilt. "I've been ready," he said. 2 days later, a black SUV stopped near the edge of the property line. Lucas watched it through binoculars from the second-floor window. No one stepped out. It sat there for 10 minutes, engine running, then turned around. He knew it was a warning. The next evening, while Isla was upstairs folding laundry, someone knocked on the front door. Not loud, measured. Lucas opened it slowly, shotgun in hand but held low. 2 men in long coats stood outside. One younger with sharp eyes and a smirk too relaxed. The other older face weathered unbothered by the cold. "Evening," the older man said. "Looking for someone." "Not here," Lucas replied. "Funny thing," the man continued. "We were told this place was unoccupied. Then you were misinformed." The younger man stepped forward slightly. "She's not yours to keep. She's not yours to take." The men exchanged a glance. Then the older one said, "We're going to come back with papers, with force if we have to." Lucas nodded once. "Then come with your last will already written." He shut the door. Isla was standing behind him silent, her hands clenched. "I know him," she said, "the older one. He was there the night they marked me." Lucas's eyes darkened. That night, Isla didn't go to bed. She stayed up with Lucas in the living room, sitting near the fire fingers curled around the edge of the couch cushion. She said they won't stop. "Not unless we make them." How, he asked. "We go public," she said. "We tell everything, names, places, what happened, with evidence. Do you have any? Some, and you have more." Lucas hesitated. "Are you sure?" "No," she whispered. "But I'm ready." The next morning they filmed a video. Isla spoke directly to the camera. No makeup, no edits, just her voice. She told her story in full. She named the compound, the people involved, described the system, the numbers, the contracts. Lucas added documents he had pulled from old real estate transfers linked to the shell companies. They encrypted the files, sent them to a trusted journalist, then waited. The article dropped 48 hours later. The story exploded across national media. The network's name was leaked, several arrests were made, properties seized. A task force was created. Anonymous tips poured in. Isla's face was blurred in most clips, but the world now knew what had been hiding behind the curtain of luxury. That night, someone tried to break into the house. The window shattered in the back hallway. But the alarm screamed, lights flared, and Lucas stood ready. The intruder ran. The police came within minutes. They didn't find him. But Isla wasn't afraid. She stood by the broken glass barefoot, her silhouette backlit by the hallway lights. "They know I'm not scared anymore," she said. Lucas watched her, something tight in his chest finally beginning to loosen. "You're not hiding. No," she said. "I'm living." That night, Lucas burned the last piece of paper with Isla's old contract on it. He watched it curl and disappear into ash, while she stood beside him, her hand in his. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The fire said enough. The snow began to melt the following week, leaving behind the soft scent of pine and wet soil. The house felt different not just in temperature but in weight, like something heavy had finally been lifted. Isla spent more time near the windows, sometimes with a book, sometimes with nothing at all. She watched the trees, the birds, the shifting shadows across the walls, like someone learning to see again. Lucas noticed she no longer avoided mirrors. One morning she walked past the large one in the upstairs hallway, paused and turned to face it fully. He stood at the bottom of the stairs watching from a distance. She didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She simply looked at herself, touched her hair lightly, then walked away. That afternoon they visited town for the first time together. Lucas had errands and Isla said she wanted to come. No disguise, no hiding. She wore a simple coat. Her hair tied back, eyes alert but unafraid. They bought groceries, had coffee, walked past the bookstore where Lucas's mother once bought novels by the box. A few people stared, maybe recognizing Isla from the blurred footage on the news, but no one approached. As they reached the truck, she leaned against the door and looked at him. "I didn't think I'd ever walk down a street without feeling owned." He said nothing, just opened the door for her and waited. That night she cooked. It wasn't perfect. The rice burned slightly, the vegetables were too soft, and she apologized twice before he took her hands and said, "You're allowed to try." She smiled. He caught it. It stayed with him longer than the taste of dinner. Later they sat on the couch, her head resting on his chest, both of them watching the fire. She asked, "What do you think it means to be loved?" Lucas thought for a long time, then said, "It means not having to earn your right to exist." She turned her face into his shirt. "Then I want to believe I can be. You already are." A long pause followed. Then she whispered, "I still dream about the blindfold." Lucas held her tighter. "I still see your face the moment I took it off. What did you see? Someone who didn't know she had light left in her?" She didn't answer, just breathed in slowly, like taking in a truth she hadn't let herself hope for. A few days later, she walked barefoot across the cold porch just before dawn and stood watching the horizon. Lucas joined her minutes later, a blanket in hand. He draped it around her shoulders. She said, "I want to speak, publicly, with my name, my real one." He met her eyes. "You don't owe them anything, I know," she said, "but I owe myself everything." The press conference was small, carefully arranged, protected by legal counsel and journalists they trusted. Isla stood at the podium in a navy dress, her hair pulled back, no makeup, no prepared speech. She introduced herself, said her full name, and told the world how silence nearly killed her. She talked about what it meant to be invisible in plain sight, how some cages are made of compliments and contracts, not bars. She didn't cry, but others in the room did. When she finished, she walked down the steps and into Lucas's arms. The picture was published the next day. It wasn't viral, it wasn't sensational, but it was seen. That night, back at the house, she stood by the old oak tree near the back fence, holding the folded blindfold in one hand. She looked at it, not with fear, but with finality. Then she tied it gently around the lowest branch, let it hang swaying softly in the breeze. Lucas stood behind her, hands in his pockets. She turned to him. "Do you remember the first thing I said to you? Please take them off." She nodded. "You did? You asked. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure you'd let me." She stepped closer. "You think broken people can build something whole, yes," he said, "if they don't try to pretend they're unbroken." She smiled. "Not the fragile kind, not the kind that asks for approval. A real one." Then she said, "Then maybe it's time we build." That night they lit a fire and stayed up late, talking about the future in quiet tones. She said she wanted to dance again, not for a stage, but for herself. He said he wanted to buy less and live more. They talked about restoring the greenhouse, planting herbs, maybe rescuing a dog. She wanted to name it Mellow after the one who once waited. Lucas agreed. As they turned in for the night, Isla paused at the bedroom door. "I'm not the girl who was left in your guest room anymore." Lucas reached for her hand. "You never were." "Then who was I?" "Someone the world tried to erase. And now you're someone writing the ending yourself." She pressed her forehead to his chest. "Will you stay with me as long as you want? Even if I fall again?" "Especially then." They didn't need to say, "I love you," not yet. Some things, when true enough, don't need declarations. They're spoken in gestures, in patience, in nights spent just existing near each other without fear. And in the quiet space where silence once meant danger, it now meant home. Spring came early that year. The trees around the Harper property bloomed faster than usual, dusting the windows with soft green shadows each morning. Isla spent her days barefoot in the garden, her hands always stained with soil, her face kissed by sunlight. The greenhouse Lucas promised to restore was already halfway rebuilt, pane by pane, frame by frame. They worked on it together in the late afternoons, her with the sketches and him with the tools. There was rhythm in the way they moved now, like the house had adjusted its heartbeat to match theirs. On Sundays May visited. She brought cornbread and stories, and once a box of old photographs from when Lucas's mother still lived. Isla listened to every word, soaking in pieces of a family that had been quiet for too long. Lucas watched her with a softness that he never tried to explain. One morning, Isla found a hawk feather resting on the porch railing. She picked it up gently, held it between her fingers, and smiled. It reminded her of the first one she had seen when she arrived just after the blindfold came off. She still kept that first feather pressed inside the pages of the book she had never finished. Not because she needed reminders of pain, but because survival deserved souvenirs too. That night she stood at the edge of the porch, wrapped in Lucas's old sweater, watching the sky. He joined her silently, a mug of tea in his hand. She looked at him. "I used to believe I didn't matter, that I was just a space people passed through." "You never were," he said. She nodded. "I know that now, but it took someone seeing me when I was still hiding." Lucas set the mug down, reached for her hand. "You weren't hiding. You were waiting for the right light." She leaned into him, her head against his shoulder. "Do you think someone can be born again without dying first?" He took a breath. "I think some of us are born more than once. Once into the world, then again into ourselves." She stayed quiet, letting that settle. Then she whispered, "I'm not afraid of my reflection anymore." "I never was," he said. The next morning, Isla walked to the oak tree behind the house. The blindfold still hung, there faded now, its silk dulled by wind and sun. She untied it gently, carried it to the back of the property, where a small patch of earth had been turned for wildflowers. She dug a small hole and buried the cloth there without a word, pressing her palm to the ground when she finished. No grave marker, no goodbye, just closure. Later that day, Lucas found her sketching near the window. Plans for a new room. She said it was for whoever needed to heal next. "We'll make space," she said. "We have more than enough." That night they danced slowly in the living room with no music, just the sound of rain tapping the windows and the fire cracking quietly. Isla looked up at him. "I don't want to be rescued anymore." "You never needed to be," he replied. "Then what did I need? Someone who didn't look away." She smiled and pressed her forehead to his. "Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't." "You saw yourself," he said. "I just stood still long enough for you to believe it." And that was the thing about love neither of them had learned until now. It wasn't loud. It wasn't made of promises or apologies. It was quiet presence. A hand that doesn't flinch, a heart that stays, and a voice that whispers not what you want to hear, but what you've waited your whole life to believe.